My phone rang in the Berlin hotel's business center. I was reviewing my keynote slides for the European Property Management Conference in 3 days. Mom, it's time, Vanessa's in labor. My son Christopher's voice was breathless with excitement. I closed my laptop. Now. We're at the hospital, they say a few more hours. You have a granddaughter coming, Mom. A tightness filled my chest that I hadn't felt since my husband passed. A granddaughter. I'm getting on a plane. Don't you have that conference? Christopher asked. You're the keynote speaker, that's a big deal. You're having a baby, I stated firmly. I know, but come after, she'll still be here. I looked at my presentation on the screen. 200 people were registered, a signed contract. I'll be there as soon as I can, 4 days at most. Tell Vanessa I'm coming. She'll be glad. Love you, Mom. He hung up. I sat staring at the phone. A granddaughter. Christopher and Vanessa lived in a pristine colonial house in Greenwich, Connecticut, a gift from her parents. Old money, old traditions. I'd been living in London, managing my late husband's properties, visiting Connecticut maybe once a year. This baby would change that. I would be present, the grandmother who showed up. I gave my keynote 3 days later, flew out of Berlin that afternoon, and landed at JFK the next morning. I drove straight up I-95 in a rental car. I stopped at a boutique in Westport and bought a silver rattle, a cashmere blanket and a stuffed lamb, probably too much. I didn't care. Their house sat behind manicured hedges. I pulled into the circular drive just past noon, grabbed my gifts and walked to the door. Christopher answered before I could knock. He looked exhausted in a way that seemed wrong for a new father. Mom, come in, we need to talk first. The words landed with a thud. Vanessa appeared behind him wearing a crisp linen outfit. No baby in her arms, no signs of a newborn in the house. Hello, Nancy. They led me not to the cozy family room, but to the formal living room with antique furniture. I remained standing. Where is the baby? Christopher sat. Vanessa sat beside him, hands folded neatly. Sit down, Mom. I don't want to sit, I want to meet my granddaughter. He looked at his hands. Vanessa's gaze was steady and cold. We placed her for adoption, she said. The room went silent. The words refused to make sense. What are you talking about? The baby, Christopher said, his voice hollow. We gave her up, it's already done. I set the gift bag down gently. The house was unnaturally still. No cries, no coos, no sounds of life. You called me 4 days ago from the hospital. I know, he said. You told me you were having a daughter. We did have a daughter, Vanessa's voice was flat, and we made the best decision for our family. Where is she? Christopher finally looked up. With an agency, they'll place her with the right family. The right family, tell me which agency, I'll go get her right now. Vanessa shook her head. It's a closed adoption, we aren't required to disclose that. How old is she? She was born 5 days ago, Christopher whispered. My granddaughter had been alive for 5 days, and they had given her away while I crossed an ocean to meet her. Why? Vanessa straightened her posture. She's deaf. The hospital did a hearing screening before discharge. She failed, they confirmed it. I stared, uncomprehending. She's deaf. Yes. And you gave her away because she's deaf. We are not equipped to handle a child with challenges, Nancy. Be realistic, Vanessa said, her tone clinical. The specialists, the therapy, the constant care, my family, they wouldn't understand. A defective heir to the family name is unacceptable. The word defective hung in the air like poison. My hands trembled, I pressed them flat against my thighs. Tell me where she is, which agency, I'll adopt her myself. You can't, Christopher stood. We checked with lawyers. Grandparents have no legal standing in these cases. The courts protect parental rights. The records are sealed. They had checked. They had made sure I couldn't stop them. If you could discard your own child, I said, my voice trembling with a fury I'd never known, then you are not the son I raised. Christopher's face hardened. Then maybe you never really knew me. You live in London, you visit once a year, you don't get to fly in and dictate our lives. Christopher, Vanessa touched his arm, but he pulled away. It's done, Mom, she's gone, you need to accept that. I picked up the gift bag, the rattle shifted inside with a hollow sound. I will never accept that. I walked out, got in my rental car and drove until I saw a hotel off the highway. I checked into a room with beige walls and a generic painting. I sat on the bed in my coat, then I lay down, and then, finally, I wept until my ribs ached. Somewhere in this state, my newborn granddaughter was with strangers, no one who loved her, no one who wanted her. When the tears finally subsided, leaving a throbbing emptiness, I stared at the ceiling. Christopher was right about the law. I had no rights, but I had resources, I had time, and I was not leaving Connecticut without her. I called my office manager in London. "Petra, I need you to handle things remotely indefinitely. I'm staying in the States." Then I opened my laptop. I found a private investigator with solid credentials and sent a consultation request. Next, I searched for American Sign Language classes. I found a beginner course at the local library starting the following week and registered immediately. It was past midnight. I looked at my reflection, a 54-year-old woman, jet-lagged, eyes swollen. I didn't look like someone about to embark on a years-long search for a child, but I was. However long it took, however much it cost, I would learn her language. So that when I found her, the first thing she would know was that someone had spent years preparing a space for her in this world. The next morning, I leased an apartment on a 6-month contract. I bought a detailed map of Connecticut and pinned it to the wall. The first pin went into Greenwich, where she was born, where she was lost. My search had begun. The ASL class met twice a week. 6 months after placing that first pin, I sat in a circle with other students, my fingers fumbling over the alphabet. My teacher, Carol, who was deaf, signed patiently. Practice, every day, muscle memory. I practiced in my car in line at the store, late at night until my hands cramped. The private investigator I hired gave up after 8 months, citing sealed records and a cold trail. I thanked him and hired another. I kept attending class. After a year, I could hold basic conversations. I started attending deaf community events in Stamford, coffee meetups, a book club. People were kind but cautious. A hearing woman asking questions about adoption and deaf children. I learned the customs. Not tapping someone on the shoulder to get their attention, understanding that deafness was a culture, not just a medical condition. Eventually, a woman named Rita, who taught at a deaf school, took an interest. Over coffee, I told her my story. They gave her up because she was deaf. I signed, my movements still deliberate. I've been looking ever since. How long? 2 years now. And you learned ASL for a child you've never met. So I would be ready when I found her. She nodded slowly. I will ask discreetly. At the schools, the programs, someone might remember something. But no one did, not that year or the next. I drove to every adoption agency, children's home and social service office within a 200-mile radius. I presented my scant details, a baby girl born in Greenwich, given up at 5 days old, deaf. Most wouldn't speak to me. Privacy laws, sealed records. Some were sympathetic but powerless. Others were coldly dismissive. 5 years in, I was 59. My ASL was fluent, though I still struggled with very fast signers. My second investigator had quit. I hired a third. My apartment walls were covered with maps, push pins and notes, a mosaic of hope and dead ends. One afternoon, sitting in my car outside another failed lead in Albany, I put my head on the steering wheel and wept. She would be 5 years old. Walking, talking, learning a language, but which one? Was anyone signing to her? Maybe she had a good family, maybe I should stop. But I couldn't. Not knowing was a pain worse than searching. The deaf community had started to know of me. Some called me the searching grandmother with respect. Others thought I was chasing a ghost. 10 years after that first pin, the map was a constellation of coloured markers. Red for agencies, blue for orphanages, green for schools. I was 64. My hair was grey, my knees ached from years of driving and walking through corridors, but my resolve had only hardened. Then on a rainy Tuesday in March, my phone rang. Is this Nancy, the woman searching for her granddaughter? The voice belonged to a social worker named Jennifer from a children's home in Richmond, Virginia. Someone in the deaf community had mentioned my story to her. There's a girl here, she's been with us since infancy. She's deaf. She's 12 now, no one has ever adopted her. My breath caught. 12, the right age. What's her name? We call her Alina, her records are sparse. I'm coming, I can be there in 6 hours. I'll be here. I drove straight through, stopping only for gas. This could be another heartbreak. I'd had calls before, but something felt different. The children's home was a converted Victorian house. Jennifer met me at the door. She was younger than I expected, with kind, tired eyes. "She's outside, recreation time. I didn't tell her you were coming." We walked through quiet hallways to a fenced playground. Jennifer pointed. "There." A girl sat alone on a bench, slightly apart from other children playing. Small for 12, with dark hair pulled back, shoulders hunched as if making herself smaller. "She does that," Jennifer said softly. "Keeps to herself. She's been passed over so many times I think she stopped hopping." My feet felt rooted to the ground. I forced myself to walk across the playground. The girl didn't look up until I was close. Then, a quick, guarded glance before looking away. I sat on the bench beside her. I raised my hands and signed, "Hello, my name is Nancy." Her head snapped up, shock widening her eyes. Adults here didn't sign. She signed back, slowly, uncertainly, "I'm Elena." Her signing was basic, like a language learned from books but rarely used. "Can I sit with you for a moment?" She nodded. We sat in silence. I watched her profile her hands. Then I saw it on her left shoulder, peeking from her t-shirt collar, a small, comma-shaped birthmark. Christopher had an identical mark in the exact same spot. A wave of emotion threatened to overwhelm me. I steadied myself. "Elena, can I ask you about where you came from?" She shrugged. "Don't know, been here always, since I was a baby." I looked back at Jennifer, then at Elena. "I need to speak with someone inside, but I will come right back. Will you wait here?" She nodded, that familiar resignation in her eyes. Back inside, on shaking legs, I asked Jennifer for her file. It was thin, born in Connecticut, placed at 4 days old through a private agency, transferred to this home at 6 months. Deafness confirmed. No family contact, no adoption interest. The timeline fit, the location fit, the birthmark fit. "I need a DNA test," I said. "I believe she is my granddaughter." It took 3 days to arrange, 3 days during which I returned every morning to sit with Elena. We signed simple conversations. She asked if I lived nearby. "I live far away," I signed, "but I traveled a long time to meet you." "Why?" "Because I've been looking for someone very important." The DNA results came back on a Friday, 99.97% match. Grandparent-grandchild. I held the paper and sobbed. 12 years. 12 years of searching, hopping, nearly breaking. I had found her. The adoption process moved swiftly. I had a stable home, no red flags. Elena's caseworker supported it. Within 3 months, we stood before a judge in Virginia. "Do you understand what is happening today?" the judge asked through an interpreter. "Elena signed. Nancy is adopting me. I get to leave here." "How do you feel about that?" Elena looked at me, then back at the judge. "Good." The judge smiled and signed the papers. We flew to London the next week. Elena stared out the window at the clouds. I signed to her about our fresh start, the flat in London, my promise to keep her safe. She nodded, then signed. "Why did you look for so long?" I took her hand. "Because you are my granddaughter, and I never stop looking for family." She leaned her head against my shoulder as the plane soared into the sky. After 12 years in an institution, a lifetime of being unwanted, she was finally coming home. The London flat felt too big, too quiet. Elena stood in the doorway of her new bedroom, not entering, just staring. "It's yours," I signed. She nodded but didn't move. The first month was hard. She was quiet, hesitant, flinched at sudden movements. She ate quickly, as if her food might be taken. She'd wake before dawn, already dressed, sitting on her bed waiting. I had retrofitted the flat with visual alerts for the doorbell and fire alarms, better lighting for clear communication. But the physical changes were easier than the emotional ones. Her ASL was functional but limited. The home had taught her just enough to get by. My signing was fluent, but we'd hit walls where she lacked vocabulary. The frustration in her eyes was a physical pain. 3 weeks in, after dinner, she looked at me and signed, "Thank you," unprompted. I had to leave the room to hide my tears. I enrolled her in a school for deaf students. She started therapy for adoption trauma. She was compliant but distant. Her teacher noted she struggled to connect with peers. She spent 12 years learning not to trust that people stay, I explained. I made mistakes. I used SIMCOM, simultaneous communication, signing and speaking English at once. Her teacher gently corrected me. "Use pure ASL at home. She needs full immersion to catch up." So I did. It felt awkward, but her comprehension grew. 6 months in, she had a meltdown over homework, screaming and throwing her books. A raw, guttural sound I'd never heard from her before. I didn't know what to do. I just sat on the floor near her and signed over and over, "I'm here. I'm not leaving, you are safe." She finally collapsed, sobbing, and let me hold her. Her therapist later explained, any correction felt like rejection, like the prelude to being sent away. Be patient, be consistent. By the end of the first year, a shift began. She made a friend, Sophia, another deaf girl who refused to be ignored. I learned to always be in her line of sight, to use clear facial expressions, to parent visually. Her education had huge gaps. I hired a deaf tutor from the university. Slowly, she began to catch up. In her second year, she joined the school's drama club, performing stories in ASL. I watched her on stage, her hands painting pictures in the air, and saw not a disability, but a beautiful, expressive language and culture. One evening, she asked me to tell her the full story of my search. We sat on the couch, and I signed it all: the call, the betrayal, the pins on the map, the 12-year journey. She cried, "You didn't give up on me." Never, I signed back, not for one day. Why? Because you matter, because they were wrong about you. She leaned into me. I thought I was broken. You were never broken. 3 years in, she was thriving, a confident 15-year-old. We had built a life, a community. Then an email arrived from an address I hadn't seen in 16 years. The subject line: family. Mom, I know what happened was unforgivable. I've thought about it every day. I don't expect a response, but I need to tell you something. Vanessa and I adopted a son. His name is Gabriel. He's 18 now, a good kid, better than I deserve. He's starting college and asked if he had a grandmother. I told him yes, but that we'd had a falling out. He wants to meet you. I know I have no right to ask, but Gabriel does. He didn't do anything wrong. He deserves to know his grandmother. If you're willing, I'll make it happen. I'm sorry for everything. Christopher. I read it 3 times. A grandson. They had adopted a son after discarding their daughter for being deaf. Elena found me staring at the screen. What's wrong? I showed her the email. What do you want to do? She signed. I don't know. He's your grandson too, she signed. If you want to go, I'll come with you. You shouldn't have to face them alone. They're the people who gave you up. I know who they are, but I also know who I am now. I'm not that baby anymore, and you might need backup. A small smile broke through. Moral support. We went to Connecticut. I arranged to meet at a neutral restaurant. Christopher and Vanessa arrived with a young man, Gabriel. He was tall, with kind eyes, nothing like the careful calculation in his parents' expressions. Introductions were made. I introduced Elena as my adopted daughter from the UK. Gabriel's face lit up. He looked at Elena and his hands came up, moving in clumsy but earnest signs. Hello, nice to meet you. Elena's surprise was evident, sign. A little, he signed back, I'm rusty. Over an awkward dinner, Christopher tried to talk about regrets. I gave monosyllabic answers. My attention was on Gabriel and Elena, who were quietly signing to each other. We met a few more times. Gabriel started coming over alone. A bond formed between him and Elena, easy, sibling-like. He was curious, genuine, and carried a quiet sadness his parents didn't have. One afternoon, weeks into our visits, Gabriel arrived looking strained. He and Elena went to the garden. Their conversation through the window seemed intense. Later, they came inside together, faces serious. We need to talk to you, Elena signed. Gabriel took a deep breath. Parents, they didn't come back for family, they came back for money. He explained Vanessa's father had been arrested for a massive financial fraud. The family wealth was gone. They were bankrupt, living in a small apartment, drowning in debt. They coached me before that first dinner, Gabriel said, shame coloring his words. Told me to play up the grandson angle, that you'd feel guilty and want to help. I went along because they're my parents. But then I met you both, this feels real. And I hate the lie. Then Elena signed, her movements firm, tell her the rest. Gabriel nodded. When I was 17, I dated a girl named Hannah. She was deaf. I learned ASL for her. My parents found out and made me break up with her. They said those people have their own world, that it would hurt my future. He looked at Elena, pain in his eyes. The same people who threw away their own baby for being deaf. The room was silent. Then Elena signed and Gabriel voiced for her as she spoke. There's more. I'm not just an adopted girl Nancy found, I am your parents' biological daughter, the baby they gave away. Gabriel stared, his face draining of colour. What? They gave me up when they found out I was deaf. Nancy searched for 12 years before she found me in that home. Gabriel stood up, paced, put his head in his hands. They made me break up with Hannah and they did this. His voice broke. I can't go back there, I'm 18. Can I stay here with you? Of course, I said without hesitation. He looked at Elena, then at me. We have to tell them, all of it. I need to be the one to tell them I know about the money. Elena agreed, we'll do it together. We invited Christopher and Vanessa to dinner at the estate. They arrived dressed too nicely, bearing a bottle of wine, hope etched on their faces. We ate, I let them make small talk, then over dessert I set down my napkin. Before you say anything, I began, there's something you need to know. I gestured to Elena. This is Elena, but that's not the name she was born with. I found her 4 years ago in a children's home in Virginia where she had lived since she was less than 2 weeks old. Given up by parents who didn't want a deaf child. Vanessa's fork clattered on her plate. I searched for 12, continued, my voice steady. Her birthmark matches Christopher's. The DNA test confirmed it. She is your daughter. Christopher's face went ashen. And we know why you're really here, Gabriel said, standing. His voice was strong, clear. Grandpa fraud, the bankruptcy. You coached me to manipulate Grandma for money. Gabriel, no, Vanessa started. I heard you, he shouted, the pain raw. You made me break up with Hannah because she was deaf, you called her those people. And you did the same to your own baby. He pointed to Elena, your daughter. Elena stood now too, she signed, and I voiced for her, my own anger giving way to a protective calm. You don't get to call me your daughter. You gave up that right. I have a family now, a real one. Christopher looked broken. We were wrong, we were scared. You were cruel, I said, standing. You made your choices, now live with them. Leave, do not contact us again. They left defeated, the illusion of their plan shattered. In the silence that followed, Gabriel cried, tears of grief for the parents he thought he had and relief for the truth. Elena and I held him. We were 3 broken pieces that had found each other and made a whole. 3 months later we were back in London. Our flat was fuller, louder, happier. Elena returned to school. Gabriel enrolled in university, studying social work. He reconnected with Hannah, his old girlfriend, long distance. One morning, I walked into the kitchen to find them both making breakfast, signing and laughing easily. Elena saw me and signed, "What are you thinking about?" I signed back, my heart full. How lucky I am. How every single day of the search was worth it. Gabriel wrapped an arm around my shoulder. We're the lucky ones, Grandma. In that sunlit kitchen, surrounded by the quiet sounds of our chosen family, I knew the story hadn't ended that day in Greenwich 16 years ago. It had just begun. And this was the best chapter yet.